The story of every human life is written not only in what happens to us, but in how our brains respond to what happens. The battles we fight, the dreams we chase, the habits we form, the strength we carry, all of these are sculpted within three great systems of the mind: focus, drive, and discipline. Focus is the entry point to everything your brain and your life can achieve. Without focus, drive becomes scattered and discipline becomes wasted effort. Your brain was designed with mechanisms to control attention, to lock onto what matters and ignore what doesn't. But in the modern world, these mechanisms are under constant assault. Notifications, noise, endless streams of distraction. Each one hijacks the circuitry that was meant to help you build greatness. And the truth is, if you cannot direct your focus, you cannot direct your future. Neuroscience shows us that focus is not simply about willpower. It is a state created by specific chemicals and circuits in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of planning and decision-making, works in harmony with systems of acetylcholine and dopamine that sharpen your attention. When you bring your eyes, your breath, your body into stillness and direct your mind onto a target, these circuits ignite. Focus is not random, it is a trained skill. And when you learn to harness it, you gain access to clarity, strength, and endurance of mind that others mistake for talent. But here is where the spiritual dimension transforms this science into power. Focus is not only about concentrating on a task, it is about choosing what deserves your devotion. If your mind is constantly captured by trivialities, by empty pleasures, by things that hold no eternal weight, then even if your attention is sharp, it is wasted. True focus requires not just the science of directing the brain, but the wisdom of directing the heart. What are you gazing at? What fills your vision? Scripture tells us that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And neuroscience confirms it. What you repeatedly attend to literally reshapes your brain. Focus is both a choice and a construction. Each day you decide what to give your eyes, your ears, your thoughts, and over time, that decision wires your identity. When you remove distraction, you free your brain's circuits to deepen attention. Imagine a spotlight in a dark room. What it illuminates becomes vivid. Everything else fades into shadow. That is how your attention system works. But most people never experience its full strength because their spotlight is constantly jerked around, shining a few seconds here, a few seconds there. They train their nervous system to be restless. But if you discipline yourself to hold the beam steady, to direct it onto one task, one prayer, one vision, your brain responds. It releases acetylcholine to heighten neural precision, sharpening your ability to see details, to remember, to execute. And as you repeat this process, your spotlight becomes stronger, steadier, able to cut through chaos. Breathing is one of the fastest tools to regulate focus. When you are scattered, your breathing is shallow, irregular, and it sends signals of stress through your body. But when you take control, when you slow and deepen your breath, you shift your nervous system into a state of alert calmness. Inhale sharply, exhale slowly. This pattern cues your brain to stabilize. Ancient spiritual practices have always used breath as a bridge to focus, and now science confirms why. The diaphragm is directly linked to brain regions that control attention. Every conscious breath is a signal that draws your mind back to center. Movement also plays its role. A brain starved of stillness is unfocused, but a brain starved of movement is unfed. Exercise increases levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the very molecule that strengthens the circuits of learning and attention. That is why physical discipline fuels mental focus. A body trained in consistency tells the brain, we are here to build. And the brain responds by wiring itself for deeper engagement. The body and brain are not separate vessels. They are one system. What you do with one trains the other. Eliminating distractions is not just about turning off devices. It is about declaring that your attention is sacred. Every notification you silence is not just a technical decision. It is a spiritual declaration that your mind is not for sale. It is reclaiming sovereignty over the most precious resource you have, your awareness. If you allow the world to dictate your focus, you will live a life of reaction instead of creation. But if you take command of your focus, if you choose what to feed your attention to, you will shape a life of intention, alignment, and power. The greatest leaders, the strongest warriors, the most faithful servants, all understood that the mind must be guarded. Focus is not just for productivity. It is for purity. It is for purpose. If you allow your mind to wander endlessly, you will drift away from the path of your calling. But if you train it, discipline it, return it again and again to what matters, your brain will learn to hold steady even when storms rage around you. This is how Navy SEALs endure chaos, how prophets endured trials, how ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things. They did not allow their focus to be stolen. And neuroscience gives us this encouragement. The more you practice directing your attention, the easier it becomes. Circuits strengthen, distractions lose their grip. What once felt impossible, holding steady focus for minutes, then hours, becomes natural. Your brain is plastic. It bends to your habits. Each time you choose to bring your mind back, you are engraving pathways of mastery. This is not just training, it is transformation. And with every repetition, you are proving to yourself and to your creator that you are faithful with the gift of attention you were given. Drive is the force that keeps you moving when obstacles rise, when fatigue weighs heavy, when the path feels long and uncertain. Without drive, focus fades and discipline collapses. Drive is not just ambition or desire, it is the biological engine of persistence. Deep within your brain, there is a system designed to propel you forward. It is powered by dopamine, the molecule of motivation. But dopamine has been misunderstood. People think it is about pleasure, but dopamine is about pursuit. It is not the reward itself, but the anticipation of the reward that fuels action. It pushes you to strive, to chase, to keep going even when the goal is still far away. The reason most people struggle with motivation is that they attach dopamine to the wrong targets. They flood their brains with quick hits from screens, from shallow distractions, from cheap pleasures, and in doing so, they trick their reward system into thinking the mission is already accomplished. Why would the brain strive for greatness if it is already drowning in counterfeit rewards? This is why so many feel tired, unmotivated, unable to chase what truly matters. Their dopamine has been hijacked. To ignite true drive, you must reclaim your dopamine. You must tie it not to fleeting pleasures, but to purposeful goals. Purposeful goal setting is the key that directs dopamine toward destiny. When you choose a goal that aligns with your higher calling, your brain's chemistry begins to serve your spirit. Each step toward that goal releases dopamine, giving you energy and clarity. The more meaningful the goal, the more sustainable the drive. Neuroscience confirms what faith has declared for centuries: without vision, people perish. Vision is not just an idea, it is a neurological command. It tells your brain what to release energy for, what to endure pain for, what to sacrifice for. When your vision is shallow, your drive is weak. But when your vision is anchored in something eternal, your drive becomes unstoppable. There is a divine design in this system. Your creator built into your biology a reward mechanism that responds not only to outcomes, but to effort. Each small step forward can release dopamine if you learn to frame it as progress. This is why gratitude, reflection, and intentional framing are so powerful. They are not just spiritual practices, they are biological ones. By giving thanks for progress, by acknowledging even small wins, you teach your brain to release the very chemical that propels you to keep going. Gratitude becomes fuel for drive. Complaining depletes it. The choice is yours. But here lies the paradox. Dopamine is released not when the goal is achieved, but in the pursuit of it. That means the joy, the energy, the motivation are found in the process, not just the destination. If you wait until the end to feel fulfilled, you will run out of fuel before you arrive. But if you train yourself to love the climb, to rejoice in each step, to see the hand of God in the journey, then your drive will never run dry. Neuroscience calls this reward prediction error. The brain releases more dopamine when the pursuit itself is valued. Faith calls it rejoicing in trials, finding joy in the race. Different words, same truth. This is why Navy SEALs athletes and leaders endure grueling training. They learn to find meaning in the struggle itself, to tie dopamine not to comfort but to challenge. They train their brains to release energy in the heat of difficulty. And the same is true for spiritual warriors: fasting, prayer, sacrifice. These are not about denying joy, but about rewiring the reward system, teaching the mind and body to crave higher things, to find satisfaction not in the shallow but in the sacred. Every act of devotion reprograms the brain's chemistry, aligning dopamine with destiny. Your environment matters here too. Dopamine is contagious. Surround yourself with people who are chasing shallow pleasures, and your drive will weaken. Surround yourself with people who hunger for growth, for excellence, for faith, and your brain will mirror theirs. Neuroscience calls it social reward circuitry. Faith calls it iron sharpening iron. When you walk with the driven, your drive is magnified. When you walk with the complacent, your fire grows cold. This is why community is not optional. It is biological necessity for sustained drive. But discipline must guide drive, or dopamine can become destructive. The same system that fuels greatness can also fuel addiction if untethered from purpose. That is why your goals must be chosen with care. Your brain does not know the difference between noble pursuit and toxic obsession. It will release dopamine either way. It is your spirit, your values, your faith that must set the target. Neuroscience provides the mechanism, but your calling provides the map. Drive without direction is chaos. Drive with direction is destiny. When you wake each morning, you have a choice. You can allow dopamine to be wasted on scrolling, on distractions, on things that leave you empty. Or you can direct it toward building, toward growing, toward serving. Every small act of alignment strengthens the reward system, training your brain to crave the pursuit of your purpose. This is why writing goals matters, why prayer matters, why declaring your mission matters. You are not just speaking into the air. You are shaping your neurology. You are carving deep pathways of motivation that will hold steady when emotions fail. And remember, this truth drive is not about how you feel in the moment. Feelings fluctuate. Drive is about what you have trained your brain to pursue. A soldier in the cold ocean at night is not motivated by comfort. He is driven by mission. A believer in the desert fasting is not motivated by hunger. He is driven by devotion. A leader building through setbacks is not motivated by ease. He is driven by vision. Drive does not ask how comfortable you are. It asks what you are committed to. And the brain, when aligned with faith, answers by releasing the fuel to keep you moving forward. Discipline is the bridge between intention and transformation. Focus tells you where to look. Drive gives you the energy to begin. But without discipline, both collapse under the weight of inconsistency. Discipline is not just about doing hard things occasionally. It is about building structures that carry you when motivation disappears. The brain is a pattern-seeking machine. It thrives on routines. Each time you repeat a behavior at the same time, in the same context, your nervous system becomes more efficient at producing it. Neurons that fire together wire together, and over time, what was once difficult becomes automatic. This is neuroplasticity in action, and it is the foundation of discipline. Most people fail at discipline because they rely on feelings to determine their actions. They think discipline is about waiting until they feel motivated, strong, or inspired. But discipline is not emotional. It is structural. It is about designing your environment, your schedule, your rituals in such a way that success becomes the default and failure requires resistance. You wake up at the same time not because you feel like it, but because your brain has been trained to expect it. You begin the day with prayer, movement, reflection, not because it is convenient, but because repetition has engraved it into your biology. This is the hidden power of discipline. It transforms what once required effort into something effortless, what once demanded willpower into something automatic. Faith teaches us the same truth. Daily devotion, daily prayer, daily obedience, these are not acts of chance but of discipline. They are structures designed to carry the heart closer to its creator, not when it feels like it, but precisely when it doesn't. The prophet prays not only when his spirit burns with fire, but also when his body is weary. The warrior trains not only when he is strong, but also when his body aches. The leader serves not only when it is celebrated, but when it is unseen. This constancy is what builds strength. Neuroscience confirms what Scripture declares: habits ingrained in repetition transform the soul and the brain alike. To anchor discipline, you must embrace small, consistent habits. The brain is more likely to sustain change when the actions are simple but consistent rather than massive and sporadic. 10 minutes of deliberate prayer each day rewires circuits of faith more deeply than 2 hours once a month. 20 minutes of focused learning each day engraves knowledge more strongly than a single long session that exhausts you. The compound effect of discipline is profound. What seems small at the start becomes monumental over time because neuroplasticity amplifies what you repeat. Each day you lay another brick, and before long, a fortress of discipline surrounds you. But here is the deeper truth. Discipline requires structure, and structure requires sacrifice. You cannot build discipline if your life is filled with chaos and distraction. The undisciplined person tries to add good habits on top of clutter, but the disciplined person clears away what does not belong. If your mind is consumed with endless noise, your brain will resist focus. If your environment is saturated with temptations, your routines will collapse. That is why discipline begins with subtraction before addition. You must clear the soil before planting seeds. You must silence the noise before you can hear the voice of purpose. Neuroscience shows us that the brain craves clarity. When the environment is clean, the circuits of attention and action fire with greater strength. Faith shows us that obedience requires surrender. Before you build, you must let go. Anchoring discipline also means embracing the power of cues. The brain links behaviors to signals: time of day, location, context. If you pray every morning in the same place, that place becomes a sacred trigger for devotion. If you train your body at the same hour, that hour becomes a biological alarm clock that calls you to strength. This is how discipline takes root, not through willpower, but through cues that make action inevitable. Neuroscience calls it habit loops. Faith calls it obedience. Both are systems of anchoring behavior to meaning until the behavior becomes identity. Discipline also demands resilience in the face of failure. The brain learns through error correction. When you miss a routine, when you break a streak, when you stumble, your brain has a choice to abandon the path or to adapt and continue. Discipline is not perfection, it is persistence. The faithful return to prayer even after days of silence. The warrior returns to training even after injury. The leader returns to mission even after setback. Neuroscience shows us that resilience strengthens neural circuits, that failure followed by correction engraves learning deeper than success alone. Faith shows us that the righteous fall 7 times but rise again. Discipline is not destroyed by failure, it is forged in it. The deepest power of discipline lies in its ability to align body, mind. When your routines are consistent, your nervous system knows what to expect. Cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine, these rhythms stabilize, sleep improves, energy stabilizes, stress decreases, the brain no longer fights chaos, it flows with order. And when this biological order aligns with spiritual devotion, with daily practices that honor your creator and your calling, discipline becomes more than habit. It becomes holiness. It becomes the structure through which greatness is built, not for a day, not for a season, but for a lifetime. This is why discipline is the anchor of the triad. Focus without discipline drifts into distraction. Drive without discipline burns out in chaos. But discipline harnesses both, holding them steady, channeling them into transformation. Discipline is the daily choice to show up, the daily sacrifice that builds strength, the daily structure that trains the brain and shapes the soul. It is not about what you feel in the moment. It is about who you are becoming through the repetition of what matters most. Stress is not the enemy. It is the raw material out of which strength is forged. Your nervous system was built to experience stress, to rise under pressure, to adapt and grow stronger with each challenge. The problem is not stress itself, but imbalance. When stress is constant, unrelenting, without moments of recovery, it breaks the body and the mind. But when stress is properly balanced with recovery, it becomes fuel. This is how elite performers endure, how warriors thrive under pressure, how spiritual giants walk through fire without being consumed. They understand that stress is not a curse but a tool, a signal, a gift when used rightly. At the biological level, stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, releasing cortisol and adrenaline, sharpening the mind, preparing the body for action in short bursts. This is exactly what you want. Cortisol increases focus, heightens vigilance, mobilizes energy. Adrenaline quickens response, strengthens output, drives survival. But the nervous system was not designed to live in a permanent state of battle. Continuous stress without relief leads to breakdown, immunity weakens, sleep collapses, the brain becomes foggy, the spirit becomes heavy. It is not stress alone that destroys. It is the absence of recovery. Recovery is not weakness. It is the second half of strength. Just as the body grows not during the workout, but in the rest that follows, the brain too grows not during the strain, but during the stillness that follows. When you recover, the nervous system recalibrates. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, cortisol levels fall, serotonin rises, and neuroplasticity takes hold. It is in these moments that the circuits sharpen, the learning engraves, the growth cements. Without recovery, stress has no benefit. Without stress, recovery has no purpose. Together, they create resilience. This rhythm is written into creation itself. Work and rest, storm and calm. Even the heart beats in cycles of contraction and release. Faith teaches us that God himself modeled this rhythm. Labor followed by rest, effort followed by restoration. Neuroscience echoes it. The brain operates in ultradian rhythms. 90-minute cycles of focus followed by natural dips that demand pause. To ignore this rhythm is to fight against your own design. To embrace it is to walk in alignment with how you were created to function. The discipline must therefore learn to harness stress deliberately and honor recovery intentionally. To put yourself into states of challenge, whether through training, fasting, study, prayer, or exposure to discomfort. And then to allow the body and brain to integrate, to restore, to prepare for the next ascent. The Navy SEAL in cold water is teaching his body to remain calm under stress, but he also learns to regulate his recovery once he is out. The monk in silence is teaching his mind to endure stillness, but he also allows space for renewal when the silence ends. Stress and recovery are not enemies, they are dance partners, and you must learn to hear the rhythm. Breathing is one of the simplest ways to manage this rhythm. When stress peaks, breathing becomes shallow, rapid, fragmented. By consciously slowing the breath, extending the exhale longer than the inhale, you signal safety to the brain. The parasympathetic system activates, recovery begins. Science calls this vagal tone. Faith calls it peace that passes understanding. Either way, it is the bridge that leads you out of chaos and into calm. Each deliberate breath is a reminder that you are not controlled by stress but capable of governing it. Sleep is another cornerstone of recovery. It is not simply rest, it is neurological repair. During deep sleep, your brain clears toxins, consolidates memory, strengthens circuits of focus and discipline. Skip sleep and stress multiplies. Embrace sleep and resilience multiplies. Modern culture glorifies burning out, but both neuroscience and scripture warn against it. Rest is not laziness. It is not indulgence, it is obedience to the very design of your biology. The warrior who neglects rest becomes fragile. The leader who honors it becomes enduring. Spiritual practices deepen this recovery in ways science is only beginning to understand. Prayer lowers stress markers. Gratitude rewires reward circuits. Stillness recalibrates the mind's rhythm. Fasting teaches the body to endure stress and then restores balance when the fast ends. Each of these is both biological and sacred, shaping the nervous system while anchoring the spirit. The ancients knew it long before labs measured it. True strength is found not only in the fire, but in the quiet that follows it. There is also the role of controlled exposure. Stress, when voluntary and measured, trains the nervous system to adapt. Cold plunges, high-intensity training, fasting, these push the body into challenge but within boundaries. They teach the brain that stress can be endured, survived, even mastered. And after these moments, recovery is sweeter, deeper, more effective. This is how you build resilience, not by avoiding stress, but by meeting it wisely, by pairing it with renewal. Neuroscience calls this hormesis, growth through deliberate discomfort. Faith calls it refinement through trials. The language differs, but the truth is the same. In your own life, this means refusing to see stress as punishment and refusing to see rest as weakness. It means embracing challenge but also protecting recovery. It means designing rhythms where effort and restoration are woven together, where your brain is pushed to grow and then allowed to settle into strength. Stress without recovery burns you out. Recovery without stress weakens you. But stress with recovery builds you into someone unshakable, someone aligned with both biology and belief, someone capable of enduring the storms and emerging stronger on the other side. Discipline is not a matter of willpower alone. It is not simply gritting your teeth and pushing harder day after day. Discipline is sustained by chemistry, by biology, by the reward systems that God has woven into the architecture of the human brain. At the center of this system is dopamine, the molecule of motivation, the driver of pursuit, the signal that tells your brain what is worth chasing and what should be ignored. Without dopamine, there is no drive, no sustained action, no fire to keep going when the path grows steep. But when you understand how dopamine works, how it rises and falls, how it can be trained and redirected, you unlock the ability to sustain discipline, not just for days, but for years. Most people misunderstand dopamine. They think it is the surge of pleasure when you get what you want, the hit of joy when you achieve the goal. But dopamine is not about the having. It is about the seeking. It rises not when the reward is in your hands, but when the reward is in your sights. It is the fuel that propels the runner toward the finish line, the student toward mastery, the warrior toward victory. And here is the paradox: if you attach dopamine only to the outcome, you will always burn out because the mountain of discipline is too high to be climbed on distant rewards alone. But if you can learn to attach dopamine to the process itself, to the small steps, the daily rituals, the ordinary grind, you create a system where every act of discipline becomes a source of energy rather than depletion. Neuroscience calls this the power of reward prediction error, the way dopamine spikes when effort is linked to progress, even in small amounts. Faith calls it delighting in the labor, rejoicing in the sowing, not only in the harvest. The lesson is the same: those who endure are not the ones who only dream of the end, but the ones who find meaning and joy in the middle. Each repetition, each disciplined choice, each moment of saying no to distraction and yes to purpose becomes fuel, becomes fire, becomes the very thing that sustains you. But dopamine is also fragile. It can be hijacked by cheap rewards, by the empty stimulation of modern life. Social media notifications, junk food, endless scrolling. All of these flood the brain with dopamine, but without depth, without purpose, without true growth. The brain adapts. The receptors downregulate. Soon what once felt satisfying feels empty, and the chase for novelty grows stronger. This is the trap of undisciplined living. Dopamine scattered in 1,000 directions, chasing shadows instead of substance. To sustain discipline, you must reclaim dopamine, directing it away from trivial distractions and toward meaningful pursuit. One way to do this is through what neuroscience calls intermittent reinforcement, spacing out rewards, making them uncertain, allowing effort to carry weight before the reward is delivered. This is why struggle strengthens. When the reward does not come immediately, the brain learns to sustain effort longer, to find strength in the process itself. Scripture echoes this truth. Patience produces endurance, trials produce perseverance, waiting produces character. What science measures, faith has long declared: the greatest growth is not in the instant reward, but in the waiting, the working, the walking forward, even when nothing yet has appeared. To sustain discipline, then, you must learn to reward yourself wisely. Celebrate effort, not only outcomes. Mark the days you showed up, the moments you chose focus, the hours you gave to growth. Allow your brain to feel that these steps matter, because biologically, they do. Dopamine released in alignment with effort strengthens the circuits of persistence, engraves the pathways of resilience, makes it more likely you will show up again tomorrow. This is neuroplasticity in action. Neurons that fire together wire together, and each act of discipline literally reshapes the brain into one more capable of discipline. But dopamine is not only about chemicals, it is also about meaning. A reward cycle is strongest when it is anchored to something larger than yourself, when your pursuit is tied to mission, to calling, to service. If discipline is only about self, it grows thin. If discipline is about legacy, about faith, about what endures beyond you, then every sacrifice is charged with deeper meaning. Neuroscience shows that dopamine circuits light up most powerfully when effort is tied to significance. Faith teaches that labor done unto higher purpose is never wasted. Put the two together, and you have the formula for unstoppable discipline: a brain rewarded by the very act of effort, and a soul fueled by the knowledge that this effort matters in eternity. There is also the power of fasting, not only from food but from easy dopamine. By deliberately withholding shallow rewards, you make space for deeper rewards to rise. When you deny yourself the constant stream of trivial stimulation, your brain resets. The receptors regain sensitivity. The small joys of meaningful effort shine brighter. Fasting teaches the nervous system to wait, to endure, to find satisfaction in what matters. It is both biological training and spiritual purification, restoring the balance that the modern world has stolen. Discipline fueled by dopamine is not about constant intensity. It is about sustainable cycles. The brain cannot fire at maximum forever, but it can fire steadily, rhythmically, powerfully when guided by wise reward systems. Build habits that reward the process. Remove the empty rewards that scatter your energy. Anchor every act of effort to a larger vision, a higher calling, a divine purpose. Then dopamine ceases to be random spikes and becomes a river, steady and strong, carrying you forward with momentum that does not fade. And perhaps the most powerful truth is this: dopamine is contagious. When you live with discipline fueled by purpose, your energy inspires others. Your resilience sparks resilience in those around you. Your refusal to quit becomes their reason to keep going. Neuroscience might call it social reinforcement, the way brains synchronize and mirror one another. Faith might call it being a light, being salt, being an example. Either way, the reward of discipline multiplies when shared. The circuits of your brain reshape not only your life, but ripple outward to reshape the lives of those who walk beside you. The brain is not built on single systems working in isolation. It was designed as a network, an orchestra of circuits, where each instrument must play its part in harmony. Focus alone is not enough. Drive alone is not enough. Discipline alone is not enough. Each on its own can carry for a while, but only when the three are unified: focus, drive, and discipline, do you become unstoppable. This triad is not random. It is wired into the very architecture of the human nervous system, and when it is aligned, it transforms ordinary people into extraordinary forces. Focus is the ability to direct the spotlight of attention. It is your prefrontal cortex narrowing the beam, saying, "Here, this matters, ignore the noise." Without focus, your energy leaks into distractions, your vision scatters, your strength diffuses. Drive is the fire of pursuit, the dopamine-fueled engine that propels you forward, that gives you hunger, passion, movement. Without drive, focus has no energy, no spark to sustain it. And discipline is the structure, the routine, the repetitive action that builds scaffolding around the pursuit so it cannot collapse. Without discipline, drive burns out in chaos. Together, they are a trinity that reflects a deeper truth. The human being was created to function not in fragments, but in integration. The nervous system itself reveals this. The circuits of focus, rooted in the frontal lobe, connect with the dopaminergic pathways of drive, which in turn reinforce the striatal circuits of habit and discipline. These are not separate systems, they are interdependent. Focus directs drive, drive energizes discipline, discipline reinforces focus. Round and round they feed one another, building momentum that grows harder and harder to stop. This is why a person with these three aligned seems unshakable, as if they walk with a force larger than themselves. Because biologically they do. Their entire brain, body, and spirit move as one. Think of a soldier on the battlefield. Focus keeps his eyes locked on the mission, filtering out chaos. Drive fuels his will to advance, to push even when exhausted. Discipline ensures he shows up day after day, training relentlessly long before the battle begins. Without focus, he is lost. Without drive, he is empty. Without discipline, he is unprepared. But with all three, he becomes unstoppable. Think of the prophet in prayer. Focus anchors the mind on God, shutting out the noise of the world. Drive fuels the hunger for deeper connection. Discipline sustains the practice when emotion fades. Without all three, the practice weakens. With them, the practice becomes fire. This integration does not happen by accident. It must be cultivated. Focus is sharpened by training the mind to hold attention in the face of distraction. Drive is strengthened by anchoring action to purpose and by rewarding the process itself. Discipline is built by consistent routines that engrave habits into the circuits of the brain. But once each is trained, the greater task begins, linking them into one seamless system. This is where mastery lies, not in excellence of one domain, but in synchronization of all. When you wake in the morning with clarity of focus, your mind is not wandering, it knows the mission. When you fuel that mission with drive, your actions are not forced, they are eager, burning, alive. And when you layer discipline over that, you do not depend on emotion to carry you, because structure holds you even when willpower wavers. This is the triad in action. And the most powerful truth is this: the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. Neuroplasticity ensures that circuits which fire together wire together. Focus, drive, and discipline, once linked, become automatic. The brain learns to unify them as one, and you no longer need to struggle to summon them. They summon themselves. This is why the great leaders of history seem tireless, why warriors endured years of battle without breaking, why saints prayed without ceasing. They had not just mastered one system, but had unified all three into a way of being. Science confirms what faith has always declared: a person fully integrated, mind, body, spirit, cannot be easily shaken. The storms may come, but the house built on rock stands. Even physiologically, this unification changes the body. Focus lowers chaos in the nervous system. Drive elevates dopamine, sharpening energy. Discipline engages the basal ganglia, streamlining behavior until it becomes effortless. Stress becomes fuel rather than collapse. Fatigue becomes signal rather than defeat. The body is no longer fighting itself, it is aligned, and alignment is power. But alignment must also be guarded. Distraction steals focus. Cheap rewards scatter drive. Laziness erodes discipline. The world constantly pulls the triad apart. To maintain it requires vigilance, rituals, spiritual practices, intentional rhythms, daily silence to restore focus, daily gratitude to strengthen drive, daily habits to reinforce discipline. This is not optional, it is survival. For without unity, the brain fragments, and with fragmentation comes weakness. The scriptures say a house divided against itself cannot stand. Neuroscience Neuroscience says a brain divided against itself cannot perform, but a house united, a brain unified, a triad aligned, this is unstoppable. The person who lives this way does not merely perform better at work or in training or in study. They live differently. They see differently. They endure differently. They are marked by a strength that seems unearthly, though it is entirely human as God designed it, firing on every level, fully alive. The power of this triad is not only personal, it is generational. When you live with unified focus, drive, and discipline, you model it. Others see it. They feel it. They begin to rise to it. Families are transformed. Teams are transformed. Nations are transformed because the integration of one life becomes the spark that ignites integration in others. The circuits of your brain ripple outward, shaping the circuits of the world around you. That is the true magnitude of this triad. It is not only about personal achievement, it is about collective elevation. So the question is not whether focus, drive, and discipline matter. The question is whether you will live divided, scattered, weakened, or whether you will forge them into one. The science is clear. The faith is clear. The path is clear. Focus without drive is aimless. Drive without discipline is chaos. Discipline without focus is empty. But when the three stand together, when the triad is united, nothing on earth can hold you back.